This is the one defensive code that every single boxer must know in order to survive in the ring. And it's called the Philly shell. Some of the greatest defensive masters of all time have perfected this technique. Legends such as Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Leonard, and even the great Muhammad Ali. It's an extremely effective way to frustrate your opponent and prevent them from ever knocking you out. So let's take a closer look at what it is, how it works, and how you can use it yourself. Okay, so the first thing that you need to understand about the Philly shell is that it's the ultimate defensive mastery. It's when a fighter has completely neutralized their opponent's attack. When they've frustrated them to the point where they cannot connect clean or even dirty. When they can't knock you out and they simply have no answer for your defense. At this point, your opponent will often become extremely frustrated and start losing their composure because they just couldn't figure out how to break down your defense. They're swinging wildly, they're lunging, they're trying different things, but nothing works. At this point, you are completely in control of the fight. This is the ultimate form of defense in boxing, and it all starts with a simple block. Now, the first part of the Philly shell is using your shoulder to block the opponent's punch. But it's not just any kind of block. You want to think of it more like you're smothering their punch rather than blocking it. As soon as their fist comes in range, you want to get your shoulder in there and push it away from you. It doesn't have to be a strong block, but you do have to be able to maintain some distance between you and your opponent. If you get too close, then they can just bull rush past your block and hit you with their other hand. So it's important to keep some separation between the two of you. In doing this, you will be able to absorb the shock of their punch without having to move your head or your body. This is very important because you don't want to give your opponent any opening to counterpunch. So by using your shoulder to smother their punch, you're able to negate their attack and stay in control of the situation. The second part of the Philly shell is rolling off of their body. After you've smothered their punch with your shoulder, you want to use your body to roll away from the incoming punch. This is not a pivoting motion. A lot of people make this mistake when they're trying to learn the Philly shell. They pivot on the balls of their feet and try to spin away from their opponent. This is not what you want to do. Instead, you should think of it more like you're scooting away from their punch. Use your shoulder to push their arm away from you, and then use your body to roll away from the incoming punch. This will help you avoid any potential follow-up attacks, and it will also make it much harder for your opponent to land any punches. As you can see, this technique is extremely effective when used correctly. Not only does it help you to avoid punches, but it also frustrates your opponent. When you keep rolling away from their punches, they start to become very frustrated and often will start lunging and swinging wildly in an attempt to connect. However, this only serves to further negate their punches and make it even easier for you to defend yourself. So now let me show you a few ways that you can frustrate your opponent even more and make them miss even more. After you've mastered the basic Philly shell, you can start to add some extra moves to really frustrate your opponent. One of the most effective things that you can do is to pretend like you're going to block a punch and then do unti. For example, if your opponent throws a straight right hand, you can pretend like you're going to block it with your left shoulder, but then drop your guard and let them swing past you. This will not only make them miss, but it'll also open up their guard and leave them vulnerable to a counterattack. Just make sure that you not too obvious about it, or else your opponent will adjust and start throwing more body shots. Another thing that you can do is to fake a block and then roll off instead. For example, if your opponent throws a hook, you can pretend like you're going to block it with your shoulder, but then roll away from it instead. This will make it very difficult for your opponent to land any punches, and it'll also frustrate them even more. Finally, you can also bait your opponent into swinging and then block or roll away from their punch. For example, if your opponent is getting frustrated and starts throwing wild punches, you can bait them into swinging and then use your shoulder to block or roll away from their punch. This is a great way to take advantage of an opponent's frustration and turn it against them. However, sometimes you need to take the fight to the next level and you need to be able to hurt your opponent. If you want to learn how to punish your opponent when they get frustrated, then you need to watch this next video. Let's take a look at some examples of fighters who've mastered the Philly shell. One of the best examples of the Philly shell is Muhammad Ali's fight against George Foreman in the 1974 Rumble in the Jungle. In this fight, Ali used his famous rope-a-dope strategy, which involved him leaning against the ropes and allowing Foreman to exhaust himself by punching the air. Ali was able to frustrate Foreman and make him miss punch after punch by using the Philly shell. This is a great example of how the Philly shell can be used to frustrate an opponent and wear them down. Another great example of the Philly shell is Floyd Mayweather's fight against Manny Pacquiao in 2015. In this highly anticipated fight, Mayweather was able to frustrate Pacquiao and make him miss punch after punch by using the Philly shell. Despite Pacquiao's best efforts, he was unable to land a significant blow on Mayweather, who was able to easily slip inside his guard and land counterpunches. This is a perfect example of the power of the Philly shell when used by a skilled defensive fighter like Mayweather. Now let's take a look at a few tips that you can use to improve your own Philly shell. First, it's important to have good head movement. Without good head movement, your opponent will be able to time your shoulder block and punch you before you can get your shoulder up. Work on your footwork and make sure that you have good balance. If you don't have good balance, then you whoa and be able to rotate off of your opponent's punches properly and could end up getting knocked out. Train with a partner who can help you to practice the Philly shell. This is an extremely effective defensive move, but it's not easy to pull off, so you need someone to help you to practice. Watch videos of other fighters who have mastered the Philly shell and try to emulate their technique. Some of the best examples of the Philly shell are Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Leonard, and Muhammad Ali. Try watching some of their fights and see how they use the Philly shell. In conclusion, the Philly shell is one of the most effective defensive techniques in boxing. When you master this technique, you'll be able to frustrate your opponent and prevent them from ever knocking you out. It all starts with a simple shoulder block and a slight rotation of your body. With some practice, you'll be able to use the Philly shell to dominate your opponents.